I've struggled with my lack of loving feelings since coming out of Christianity to Torah. Back then, if you felt you were right with him, then it must be true.
Christianity chases a feeling. The truth is about having something, having a relationship, having covenant, having something. It's about being and having, not about feeling. Now, it doesn't mean that feelings aren't there. When you have the relationship, the feelings will come.
So, clarification about the ones who stay in him. The way I connected it was with, let this mind be in you. So, the way we stay in him, is this how you would, if you could expand on that, would that be like being like in our heads, like thinking throughout day in, day out about what we're supposed to be doing, knowing what we know now with Torah and your teaching, so that we can stay in the path? Is that how we stay in him, or how?
All right. Let's use a very simple analogy, all right? If you're a child and I tell you stay here, and let's say here is a room or a space or something, stay here, and then you look at me and I say, yes, don't go out there, and I give you the boundaries. So when it says stay in him, it means stay within his boundaries, okay? Which he gives us commandments that tell us what the boundaries are, okay? Stay in him is stay within the instructed boundaries, okay?
Very good. I appreciate that clarification.
Good.
Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah. But that also includes thinking of him, right?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, look, if you say to a child, stay here, all the child needs to think about is not crossing a boundary. It's very simple. But what if you're told, we're going to walk through some stores, don't touch anything? Anybody ever told your child that? They don't remember very well. But in order for them to stay in that boundary, they have to be thinking about the boundary. So we start with the simplest boundary is, don't move, stay here, right? A more complicated boundary is, I want you to have something in your mind as we do this thing, that this is something I don't want you doing while we're doing this thing, okay? I want you to be aware. I did this with my children in a way that's really interesting. Maybe it'll help you guys. When you first take your children out to a store, one of the fears parents have is that they'll disappear. Because children, if you take your eyes off them for a second, they magically disappear. Well, no, they just keep moving so quickly and you didn't see them move. So I told my children, I taught them very specifically that my job was to keep them safe. So if I ever asked my child when they were 2, 3 years old, what's dad's job? Keep us safe. Okay. So then I'd say to them when we were about to go out to the mall or the stores, I'd say, what's my job? Keep us safe. It's okay. Do you want to make my job hard? No, we want to be safe. Good, okay. If you can't see me, I can't see you. And if I can't see you, you're not safe. So now that thought is in their head. I'm not safe if I can't see dad. Okay? And they freaked out once or twice when they couldn't see me and got a little panicky because I told them you're not safe. So that thought, of course, disappeared for half a second, which is why they took their eyes off me in the first place, right? So it's a mindset, yes, but the mindset is within the parameters of, it's kind of like when he says pray always, is keep aware of the expectations. My expectation is that, your expectation is I'm going to keep you safe. My expectation is that you're going to be where I can see you. But notice the wording I used, though. If I can't see you, I didn't say. I said, if you can't see me. Because they have no idea if I can see them. So I said, if you look up and you can't see me, you're not safe, okay? Keep your eye on me. Don't go outside of my sight, all right? And that's kind of what Abba says. Abba says, keep your eye on me, and when you keep your eye on me, you're safe, all right?
I love that analogy with the Father. It's beautiful. So every Shabbat, when we're in the circle, when we're dancing, we dance Hidem Atov, right? And that's my favorite part of the whole, obviously with Brianna's songs, everything is so good, right? But when we're doing the actual CD songs, and it says, see how good, it says in there, see how good and how pleasant it is for brothers to dwell together in unity. So I was thinking about what you were saying, how he wants us to be in unity, like one, like they are one, right? And so But how do we have to have a leader, I guess, right? Because if we don't, everybody's going to go wherever, right? Like we all have our different ideas and thoughts and belief and interpretations, but we have a leader who is going to clarify it and make the righteous ruling and teach us how to really go about this book. That's the only way we can really become one, you know? So I was thinking about that. Is that a good way to look at it, Rabbi?
Yes. Look, unity, one of the analogies in the verses is the idea of being part of a body, right? About the finger or the hand versus the eye or this or that. But if we don't understand we're part of a body and we're supposed to be working together, if we think that we have independence beyond what normal, I mean, obviously as individuals we have a certain level of independence, but as far as functioning, there's a brain that controls everything. My hand just can't go off and do whatever it wants, okay? It only can respond to if it's in unity with what my mind wants it to do, okay? So a lot of us are like, I guess this might be really great. How many of you have watched a baby when it first starts moving its body and realizes it doesn't have any control over it? And then it's like, what is that thing? How do I control that? And it's just kind of going different, whatever, okay? But they're making it move and they're not really sure how, and it doesn't do what they want it to do until they learn to reach for things or whatever. And so that's kind of us when we first come into the walk is, how do I be a part of this body so that I'm not just wandering off and just doing whatever, but I actually am being in a functional way, a part of this body, okay?
Beautiful.
I always find it great watching, the like pre-1-year-old when they first start to be able to not just, because when they're really little, they don't even roll off. They don't do anything. They just lay there, right? Then all of a sudden they start moving their hands around and they start to, but they kind of look at them weird, like, what is that? And how do I control that, right? And it's that look on their face is the coolest thing. And then, of course, we don't think anything of our hands and things. We just move and do things that we do. But they actually have to think about reaching out or eventually standing up or whatever it is,
Yes, that's awesome. It reminded me when Matteo was young and his brain is different, we had to do a lot of neurological programming to help him, for his body to have the right response, all the different things that kids naturally do on their own. We needed to help him with that. And the brain is just powerful and it can actually grow and evolve, and it's beautiful. Rabbi, with verse 7, you were talking about walking in the light. And then I was writing so fast, and I think what I get from you was like, as long as you stay in him, you do not sin. But it's a moment by moment. Like you can only do one or the other, right? If there's darkness, there's no light. If there's light, there's no darkness. And it started to make me think about some of our emotions, that we can only entertain one emotion at a time. So if we're in a bitterness state or sadness or negative state, we can't be at the same time grateful or joyful or, any of the good ones. So we can only be in him or not in him.
Right.
And we have to make the effort to literally be present, paying attention, right? Like you said, because many times we'll just doing whatever mindlessly without even, thinking if we're honoring him or not,
right.
So,
right.
Yeah. Anyway.
Look, I would want to make sure to emphasize that people would read this verse and think, if I'm in this state, I'm not capable of sinning. No, if you sin, you're no longer in this state.
Yeah.
Okay? So you're actually incapable of being in this state if you're sinning. If you're not sinning, then you can be in this state. Just kind of reverse it a little bit, all right? Because we've looked at it in the backwards way of looking at it. Because they'll say, well, I actually have watched, I don't wonder if the guy actually wrote it as an article. One teacher way back when wrote an article about how, as believers, we can't sin. I'm like, who do you know? All right? And basically he was trying to make a definition that it's no longer sin. So whatever you do isn't actually sin. And so, I don't know, a lot of New Testament writers talk about sin and that we can still do it. So it's really a misinterpretation of the point John's trying to make, which is you're not capable of being in this state if you're sinning. So if you're in this state, you are not capable of sinning. While in this state, you're not sinning. okay? But if you do sin, which you are always capable of doing, then you're not going to be in this state anymore. So you go from being of Elohim to being of the devil.
And Rabbi, I also wanted to appreciate you for being not just, obviously our teacher, the main thing, but also being our shepherd and helping me, I'm just talking about me now, helping me with your right rulings, with your counseling, with your presence, because in this walk, many times I feel like I'm still shaky like a little kid who starts to walk, and then you're like, you need something solid to keep you like, oh, you're doing it well, this is, like you can actually be that person for us. And you have many times for me. I just wanted to thank you for that, Rabbi.
You're very welcome.
And then the last thing I wanted to ask you was, when you were talking about the lust of the eyes, and I don't know where that verse is, but the lust of the eyes, the pride of life, the lust of the flesh, is that because, he's using specific words for flesh, eyes. Is that because that's how that's where the thoughts or the mind can go in the wrong way because of our senses? Like that's how it starts. Can you expand, I guess, on the lust of the eyes? What is he referring to? You talk about it, but can you expand it a little bit more, please?
Well, okay, so you might want to go to the Parsha Pearls program where they did Proverbs 6:16, okay, where it talks about these 6 matters Yahweh hates, the 7 are an abomination, a proud look, a lying tongue, hands shedding innocent blood, a heart deceiving wicked schemes, feet quick to run to evil, false witness breathing out lies, and one causing strife among brothers. Look, the lust of the eye simply has to do with you see it, and then how you respond based on you see it, so then a desire is there, okay? Think of it like people that do impulse buying. Impulse buying is a lust of the eyes to some degree. Not impulse buying meaning you went through the store and you see something like, oh, I forgot to put that on my list. I'm glad I saw that. I'm talking about the thing you would not have bought had you not seen it, and all of a sudden you wanted it, okay? And that's why all that stuff is by checkout. Okay, you go, I want that candy, okay? All right? So that's a lust of the eyes, okay? It starts with you see it, you want it. This is what started in the garden, right? The first thing is Chava saw it and said, well, she said, right? I saw that it was good for this or good for that, okay? Yeah. So take the word lust out, simply make it simpler with desire. A desire that started with seeing it, okay? And so that's what it's talking about. That. The lust of the flesh, it's something that your flesh, nature wanted, not your body necessarily, but the below part of you, the fleshly nature, the one where you were dead in trespasses, that person that you were wants it, okay? That's the flesh. Then the eyes is, okay, even if I've overcome the flesh somewhat, I see something, it can re-trigger that stuff. Visual, okay?
I was wondering, when he pops our bubble, is that when our works start, when we're judged, for our works? Is it when our bubble is popped?
Yes.
Okay.
Look, and I've said that in the sin teaching, okay? What you did before you knew that there was actually, that what you did matters, is not going to be held against you. Now, you may be paying consequences still because of what you chose and did before you knew better. But what he wants to know is when I've revealed, remember, what's revealed belongs to you. So until it was revealed, it really wasn't something you were so much necessarily responsible for in the big picture. You might have been responsible for it in the below picture, right? How you treated somebody and then whatever consequences happened with that or whatever you did had consequences. But from a sin point of view, the definition of sin is transgression of the law, okay? And so until he popped your bubble, now when he popped your bubble, only what was revealed is now what you're responsible for, okay? So if you did not yet, let's say the first thing you figured out was the Sabbath, and you hadn't figured out kashrut yet or holy days, well then those things you weren't responsible for yet. You're only responsible for what he revealed to you. Maybe the first thing he revealed to you is that Christmas is not really something you ought to be doing. Fine. then that's something you're now responsible to deal with. Whatever he first shows you, sometimes it is kashrut that people start with. Whatever it is, you're now responsible once it was revealed to you. Okay? Did that help?
Yes, thank you. Because I was wondering about works that I did before.
No, don't worry about whatever you did before he woke you up. You were dead in Ephesians 2 tells you that. But now you've been made alive because you've been reborn, so to speak. You've been given an opportunity to try and start again, right? You've been given a new start. Think of being born again as being just getting a fresh start, okay? As opposed to some spiritual, whatever Christianity wants to call it, okay? But it's you getting a fresh start, all right?
So all my life for me, and so many people, I always think about King Solomon. He said, there's nothing new under the sun. Otherwise, if I did it, so did you, or I thought it, or if it happened to me, or we're going through different things. And I was thinking about Ezekiel and the 7 spirits, and I was wondering if that relates to personalities, because we have different personalities, but everywhere you go, there's one of you or somebody that looks like you and has your same personality. Is there 7 personalities that have to do with 7 spirits?
I've never looked at that, so I wouldn't be able to answer that.
And then this week I was listening to Brianna's song, sitting there kind of chilling, and all of a sudden, all my life I've never felt like I belonged anywhere, like a misfit, never at home in the churches. I was always felt like an orphan. I had parents, but things were good, and even in churches didn't have the counsel that we had here or the teachings, and everything was a lie anyway. So the teachings, the doctrines, the history lessons. So then I come here, but I was thinking about how I felt like an orphan, and then I was listening to Brianna's song, Brick by Brick, and all of a sudden one line, it said, home is where you sit on the throne. And I jumped up because all of a sudden it just dawned on me, now, home is, if I get off the throne and he's on the throne and it's a truth, that's where our home is. That's where we are, become his. And so I was thinking, like lately, whenever I ask Joey to show me something, he shows it to me, and different things I see and I study, and I've never been big on self-help until lately, until this last year when he decided it was time for me to really get down and dirty, nitty-gritty, and get rid of the flesh. And so all of a sudden I was telling him a few weeks ago, well, I need to be like a nut just broke open. And then he showed me a poem. It said, for a seed to achieve its greatest expression, it has to be completely undone. And for it, the shell cracks open and its insides come out and everything changes. And that's for us when he pops our bubbles. Yeah. We start germinating, so to speak. We're that seed. His word is truth. It's a seed. And then we can start growing. And he can only show us what we can see at the time as he opens our eyes on each layer when we're ready to keep growing and to keep moving. And so I was thankful for that. And I was, this other thing I saw, it was like 16 things to help your mind. And every thought we've ever had has wired our brains. And I really never realized that until this last year when I was going through neuroscience, and now I see everything that wires your brain. Every thought you have wires your brain one way or another, and we train our brains to either take care of our body, accept ourselves, or to walk, like you said, every moment we choose. That's how we wire our brain. We're in the moment. So I was grateful for that. And then I realized it talks about how our brains are lazy because we don't use our brains anymore. We don't memorize anything. We have computers and technologies at our fingers. When we were growing up, we had dictionaries or Britannica, and we had to memorize everything. Everything wasn't just there. And so we don't use our brains. They're lazy now. And it was talking about each step that you go through, how your brain has to struggle, like use a different hand, or if you can't remember something, don't just look it up, make yourself think, because it makes your brain struggle to remember, and then your brain's not lazy. And it went on to different steps to not have a lazy brain anymore. So we're lazy in him too, I think, because we just, because in the Christian world, he did everything for you. So now you're like, well, shoot. And I never understood before when you said he doesn't really care what you're doing, like what you're driving or where you work or whatever. I found that really hard to to embrace him or, to come to him. But as I realized that every trial we go through is that seed breaking open. It's every trial we go through, we struggle. And because of it, that's how we grow and that's how we transform to him. And so that's just my lesson that I learned this week, that I believe he showed me. And I could have never done that. And today I was sitting here and I was thinking I could be anywhere in the world right now. But here I am. He called us. And like he said, we're international, we're worldwide. So we are privileged here today, and I don't know why in the heck he called me or chose me or think I could make it, and he did it when I was in my 60s. And so I'm grateful to have a chance, but I always think, I don't know why he thought I could make it, but I'm grateful that he did, and I'm so grateful for you. And the other day I was thinking, well, how come I didn't have Rabbi Steve when I was like 18? And he said, well, because he was only like 14, and so...
That's a good reason.
And so that's what he told me, and I thought that was kind of funny. I said, I don't know what he's doing at 14, but it probably was not a teenage.
I didn't start understanding any of this until I was in my early 20s, so 23. So, yeah, at 14, I certainly wasn't. But I appreciate that. I appreciate that very much. And I think that, look, when I don't care what word you prefer, lazy, complacent, distracted. It all still goes back to the reset about the roaring lion and what makes you prey, what makes you potential prey for him to prey on. Okay, it could be that you gotten a little complacent. You can call that lazy. You can call that, where you just got comfortable. Okay, comfort is a terrible place to be at times, okay? Because when you're comfortable, you can become less vigilant, less aware, less paying attention because you got comfortable, okay? So be careful with that.
In 1 John 3:9, you were talking about do righteousness, exemplifying him, and that man does not sin. And I remember way back in college, I was majoring in biblical studies, and I had to take Koine Greek. Don't ask me if I remember a lick of it, but they took this verse. We were using this verse as an example of why it's important to know the languages behind the English. And the professor, I remember, said, it's the tense is a present perfect. It means you're doing righteousness, you won't keep on sinning.
Right.
And I really appreciated your bringing that out, that, it...
It's because of my deep Greek studies.
It's at any given moment, this is where we are. And I just thought, well, that's got to be part of my leveling up then. I'm going to write that down because the more leveling up I can do spiritually, the more moments I'm giving him to be aware, okay, who am I representing right now?
Amen.
Who am I? And that was really good.
Amen. Well, before you go to anything else, so let me just say this. Look, for those of you out there that think you need, because people contact me on a regular basis asking for resources, okay? I figured out the language problem just from context, not from digging into the different types of Greek that something could be written in and the little subtleties there. But the context is not just maybe a few verses before. Part of the context is Ephesians 2. Part of the context is John 17 or John 15. We're going to get to that soon too. There's context that helps me understand what John is talking about in 1 John. And I know what it can't be saying and what it's better likely to be saying, even if I didn't understand the subtleties of the Greek, because of context. I just want to help you guys understand that that's part of what you get from me as a teacher, is I'm giving you such an amount of context, okay? So when I come out with something that it doesn't say in your translation, I've made a really strong case as to why I'm probably right, and I get backed up by, in that particular form of Greek, it actually is kind of in that form. But it was obvious in the context if you actually have context, okay? But you have to have that. And you don't have it just, I read a couple of verses before or after. No, it's the context of everything eventually pulls it all together. Because then you know what things can or can't be saying, all right?
Awesome. I I love this whole teaching, but I especially resonated with, there are things that aren't forbidden, but they're just dumb.
Yep.
And so you're not breaking Torah, you're not sinning, but you're just being stupid. And I really resonate that because I've always, ever since the beginning of this walk, I've begun to feel and still feel that each of us has a personal Torah. Something that's okay for someone may not be expedient. Like Shaliach Shaul said, all things are lawful for me, but not things are expedient. They don't bring fruit.
Right.
They're not helping me to become like Yeshua. And that thing or set of things might be different for me than it might be for the next person. But I'm just very aware that this whole thing, like you said in your reset, about being distracted, my time-wasting habits. I'm learning to level up, but I still struggle in places. And, it's what I see on the internet or what I get caught up in, and I can just get into it. And so I'm forgetting to be aware of focusing my energies on leveling up and staying prayerful, staying alert and mindful of what he's wanting from me every single moment. And I just really thought of that verse, how Shaul said, there's things that are, they're not unlawful, but they're not helpful.
Exactly. But look, just for context, okay, there may be things that affect me negatively that don't affect you and vice versa, as far as like personal Torah, we'll call it, whatever you wanted to call that. But there's also the context of what maybe was okay when you were 15 or 20 might not be okay when you're 50 or 60, okay? Because it didn't affect you in that level of metabolism and energy and what you were doing activity-wise the way maybe it would affect you now. So you have to find ways to understand that wisdom is also contextual to age and other things that may make a difference, okay? When I ate whatever, when we were younger, and I probably lived on pizza and stuff like that. I couldn't do that now. But it didn't seem, okay, to have an effect on me then, okay? Now, would it break Torah to eat a half-gallon of ice cream every day? No. Would it be expedient and smart? No. You see what I'm saying? Those are the kinds of things that, you could do. And I just found out, much to my disappointment, that they don't even make half gallons anymore. They're 48 ounces. They're gypping us. They make it look the same. It's the same shape. What does less? No wonder it seemed less when I was eating my daily amount. Okay, so, all right, go ahead.
Well, I just kind of extrapolating something from last night, which, by the way, was amazing, the Torah study. But you were mentioning how emotional blockage prevents us from hearing directly. And I thought of how James said, if anyone asks for wisdom, Father will abundantly give it. And it pertains especially to our trials and tribulations, as Jane was saying, be joyful when you fall into these things. But so we can ask wisdom for what are you trying to tell me, Father? Is there anything, or is it just life? And so this emotional blockage is preventing, again, the leveling up. It can prevent my hearing and being aware of where I'm being dumb. And not maybe breaking Torah, but Father wants to be so clear with me about, I'll tell you, I'll convict you. I'll show you where you need to level up. I'll show you where this stuff is. And so I am just so grateful for all that you teach and share with us about clearing out that emotional blockage so that we can get pretty fast feedback when we're being disciplined and,
Excellent.
and keep leveling up.
All right, so look, I want to just kind of maybe clarify something for people, at least the way I would see it. Because some of you are like, well, what is emotional blockage? Okay? And it could be, more often than not, when you ask for wisdom, are you asking for wisdom or are you asking for what you want to be then endorsed as wisdom? See, that's an emotional potential blockage. I emotionally want something and I want Abba to tell me that that's wise to do. Wisdom is neutral, okay? So if you've got a preset bias or preset way you would like things to be, that may make it hard for you to receive, okay? All right? So that's, it's kind of like, well, you said you want the truth, but can you handle the truth? You can't handle the truth. Well, you ask for wisdom, what you get may not actually be wisdom because you want to hear what you want to hear. Remember, there's more than one voice could be in your head. Hasatan may give you what you think is wisdom, but it's matching you. I'm more likely to buy into the wisdom that doesn't necessarily match what I was hoping for, okay? Because the voice that's cheering me on in the wrong direction may be the wrong voice, okay? So just beware of that. When she says emotional blockage, that's one way it can look, all right? Is that you already want it to be a certain way or don't want it to be a certain way. And so it's going to be hard to receive if it doesn't line up with your emotional state, okay? All right, go ahead. Does that make sense?
That's excellent.
Oh,
yeah.
good.
Just one more thing. I always get a pain in my heart for my very Christian, very devout family. When I know you're speaking the truth, you're standing there and you're saying, look, they're not doing the doing. He's not in them. And that's right out of the scripture. That's what
Right.
John is saying. He's not in them. And yet, my dear sister, both my dear sisters and niece, and they love to stay in touch with me. But the way they're talking to me is that we all have him, and they don't understand. And I just have not sensed. I told them everything right out from the beginning, and I can see just the veil kind of just came right back over their eyes, and they're just saying, well, you're just doing Jewish things, but you have the Ruach just like we do, and right. It just puts a pain in my heart. And so what happened is my closest sister wanted to get online live with me and watch me light the candles for Hanukkah. And, if there's prayers, if there's songs, whatever. And I'm happy to do that. I think that would be great and everything. But I'm trying to think of how to create a ceremony that doesn't buy into this thing like, okay, this is beautiful, he's the light of the world and we're all in it, It's hard. I don't know if you have any comments on that.
Well, look, when people want to do some of the peripheral things or some of the little flavorful things, that's fine. Let them do them, let them enjoy them, kind of get something out of it. But what I'd rather address is the idea that this is talking about those who say that they know him, Messiah, or feel like he's in them when they're not doing these things, that's actually not the truth. That doesn't mean that the Creator who created you has no relationship. At least he created you. Just like any child you create, no matter how close you are, how much they actually know you, you still have a love for them, okay? And so when your sister or anybody who's in any religion, the ones that believe in a creator, okay? They have some sort of a connection with the idea that there's a creator, okay? And so that gives them some sort of devoutness or whatever it is that they feel in that sort of relationship. But the idea of the Messiah that this talks about, he is not in them the way they think, because the components of that is if you say you know him and don't guard his commands, well, then you don't. okay? You don't have that level of relationship, okay? It doesn't mean you have no relationship, it's just you don't have that level of relationship, okay? And so I don't want you to think that all these people, that means that, well, you guys are just whatever. Although, to whatever degree, now, if you don't have any connection with anything, it says you were dead in trespasses and you were strangers from the covenants and everything else. Part of that is for Christians. And it's funny because Paul wrote it and they're not listening, okay? Because now they're outside of covenant and they're outside of the promises and all those things that Ephesians 2 is talking about. Now, of course, Paul's talking to Gentiles who don't have any idea, or coming from all kinds of paganism and everything else. That's who he's addressing there. He says, you guys were outside of all of this. Christians think they're inside of all of this when they're actually not. And that's where the confusion comes in. And it's, again, the level of relationship, okay? Everybody that exists has some level of relationship the Creator has with you. Whether you have it with him is a whole nother story, all right? Because he made you. You exist because he wanted you to exist. And so he has something with you. Whether you have it with him, that's a whole nother story. Does that make any sense? I know it's a little hard to kind of follow that necessarily, but he has a relationship with everything he's brought into existence. Whether you know he actually has one with you, whether you are understanding their desired relationship that he wants with you, that could be a whole nother story, okay? You may not have the desired relationship. And so your sister, and a lot of you have some very strongly devout or very vertically committed people, whether in Judaism or Christianity or some other form of something, and they're very serious about that understanding they have of there being a creator. I'm all for that. That's a starting point. Okay, there's a lot of people out there that don't believe there's a creator. So they haven't even gotten to the starting point, okay? But what makes them have peace is to think that as long as we believe in a creator, we're all the same. But we're not. We don't have the same relationship. We're not in the same, again, are we strangers of the promises? Are we strangers of covenant? Do we understand these other things? No, we're not on the same page, okay? Which is why you have a lot of Messianic groups out there that see Christianity and other things. They're just brothers and sisters like we are, but we're not. Maybe distant cousins. 3 times removed, I don't know. But we're certainly not brothers and sisters because we're not on the same page. We don't see things the same. We don't understand things the same, okay? At least not, I'm not saying the most important thing. They believe in a God, so do we. They believe in a Messiah, so do we. Good. That is a starting point, okay? That doesn't make us echad, congruent, or anything else. But it certainly is a starting point because if you don't believe in the Creator and you don't believe in the Son on any level, we have even less in common, okay? Does that help?
Rabbi, that is right up there with millennium and kingdom in comforting me and helping me to understand. I look back on my own long journey in Christianity, very sincere Christian, and what did I feel then? I did feel that I knew him, and the verse that often comes to me is how Yeshua described, you're not going to come to me unless the Father draws you. And so there, like you said, it's a starting point. There is a drawing relationship happening by the Father. You're not bubble popped yet, but there's always hope. And I feel very hopeful of what you just shared. And I think that's going to help me in relating to them.
Well, good. And I want us, look, I don't want us to be looking down on or mocking or judging anybody in any other belief of any sort, okay? You have your walk. You were them before you were this. And so just understand kind of the disconnect that you have in trying to come together is that you're just not able to do that because of the way you see things and they see things, okay? You don't have but maybe one connecting point. We both believe in a God and a Son. Okay, good. That is a good start, all right? A lot of people don't believe any of that. Okay, so there you go. It's a starting point. But how they see it and how we see it, not the same. So now we have another beginning of disconnect, right? That's where those disconnects start to happen.
All right, from Olivia. Rabbi, if we are really one, unified in him, we really can't hate our brother. Is this correct? And thank you for saying unity means we all believe the same, that we need to agree on the basics. It always bothers me.
Yes, and by the way, it was good to see you again, Olivia, when you were here earlier. Remember the directional thing about if you're in him, is it that you can't do something, or if you're not doing it, then you're in him, okay? So when it says, if we really are one, unified in him, then we really can't hate our brother? No, it means you won't hate your brother, okay? Because you can't hate your brother and really be one and unified in him. Kind of reverse the words a little bit. But if you are really one, unified in him, then you won't hate your brother, okay? So hopefully we understand. Wording is important, okay? So you can't hate your brother and be really one and unified in him. I'd switch it around and that would be the right wording. However, if you are really one and unified in him, you won't hate your brother, because if you did, you wouldn't be one and unified in him.
All right, from Megan Morrell, and this two-part. I've struggled with my lack of loving feelings since coming out of Christianity to Torah. Back then, if you felt you were right with him, then it must be true. Now that I'm seeking true obedience, I don't feel as much as I used to. I simply have peace that I finally know the right way to please him. Should I be feeling his pleasure?
Oh, boy. Okay, listen. And I'm only reacting that way because those of you that came out of Christianity, I don't want to so broad stroke this, but this is probably reasonably true, chases a feeling, okay? Christianity is about feeling something, all right? The truth is about having something, having a relationship, having covenant, having something. It's about being and having, not about feeling. Now, it doesn't mean that feelings aren't there. When you have the relationship, the feelings will come, all right? And the feelings are there. But it's about having something, okay? Look, a lot of you would probably do a lot better in your marriages if you could figure this out, because feeling is what got you married in the first place. Feelings are not going to stay the way they were when you first met each other. You're like, you know? But now you have something that's much more substantial than just feelings, okay? And so this idea of like, I don't feel as I used to, well, of course not, because you're not chasing a feeling anymore. You're building a relationship that's not built on feeling. It's built on something much stronger than feeling. It's built on logic, reason, understanding, knowing. I know him now. I didn't know him before. I just had these feelings about him before. Okay? So let's stop chasing feelings and stop thinking that we're in the wrong place. Because we've had people leave this ministry because it didn't have the emotional stirring or whatever it is that people used to get in the charismatic or, that kind of stuff, right? And the Pentecostal stuff, whatever. So they went back to chasing feelings. Okay, you want feelings and all that kind of stuff, go someplace that's what you're chasing. We're chasing down a relationship, okay? And that relationship is all beyond feelings. Now, does that mean that I'm not moved by that relationship from time to time? No, of course I'm moved by it, okay? I mean, there are moments where I really am moved by my relationship with my wife or my relationship with my children, whatever. But I'm not chasing a feeling, and I'm not using a feeling as the measuring stick, okay? One of the things we're told to pursue is peace, okay? That's a fruit of a relationship. We're not chasing a feeling, okay? Peace is a condition, okay? When there's peace, that's a condition, okay? You know what love is? Love is a condition. We've turned it into a feeling, okay? Being in love or being loved by someone is a condition that you can experience. But if you're talking about love being something you feel, then you're looking at it wrong, okay? Being in that condition may give you good feelings, but it's a condition, okay? If you are being loved, that's something that's happening, and then you may feel something about what's happening. It doesn't mean that the feeling is the thing that's happening, okay? All right, so hopefully that makes sense, all right? So if you're coming out of a comparing this to when you used to be in the church system. No, we're not here pushing and promoting you to feel anything. The feelings will come when you feel content that you're in the right place, that you have peace, that you know what you're doing and it's pleasing in His sight. All of these things will flow that way. But it's not about, people show up on Sunday because they want to feel a certain feeling. Okay, you should come here because you want to learn a certain thing, you want to know something, you want to build your relationship. This is not about a feeling. Now, you're going to hear some incredible praise music and you're going to have a lot of feelings there, okay? I mean, look, we are becoming so blessed and spoiled because almost everything we sing now is written in-house. Okay, Brianna's written almost everything we sing. And now we've got Deirdre writing some stuff. We got another new one that she wrote that's going to be coming soon, and she's doing a great job. And I love that we're not singing the typical things like, look, I'm not picking on Paul Wilbur, but Paul Wilbur was the praise leader in a Sunday church most of his life, while he was writing all these great Messianic songs that everybody thinks are so great. But the guy was he was the praise leader in a Sunday church. Is that really, I don't want to promote that, okay? I'm not picking on his musical talent. I mean, the guy's an icon in terms of a musical talent and writing that kind of stuff. But I'd much prefer stuff that's being written and inspired here. As a matter of fact, she keeps writing stuff. I'm speaking of my daughter at the moment, inspired by things I say. I was teaching something last night, and as soon as I finished, she was on the piano writing something. Okay? She's taking whatever He's given me and she's putting it into music. I mean, that I think is much more powerful. I mean, I watched something this morning, I was trying to find some live thing that was going on, and they're singing mainstream contemporary Christian songs at their services. And it's funny because one song they sang, I liked the song because it's actually a clean message song, but I would never have us sing it here because it's that. It's completely linked to that, even though it almost kind of hints at Torah observance is what we need to be doing in the song, okay? You guys know Rich Mullen's Step by Step? The word's actually about, and I will follow you in all of your ways and all these kind of things. I mean, it's a great song from that point of view. It's mainstream Christianity. We're not singing it here, okay? Love the words. Wish it wasn't so connected into that, okay? But I don't want to put something out here that you're going to be then pulled back emotionally. Remember, we just talked about the emotions, to that space where you learned those songs and you felt those feelings. And now you're back in your mindset, you're back there. Brianna writes something you've never heard before. You can't be anywhere but here. This is where you first heard it. This is where you first experienced it, okay? And her message, which comes almost always from either the verse itself or from something I taught, is right in line with what we understand and what we're teaching. And, she understands what I'm saying because when she puts it into song, it hits there. And she also listens to you guys and knows what you're feeling. And she says stuff that hits exactly what you're feeling, okay? And the words just reach in and help you with dealing with whatever that is. Incredible talent. Praise Yah, okay? All right, anything else, John?
We've got a couple more from Olivia. The first one, the reason John tells us that our joy might be complete or fulfilled in 1:4 is because we can actually know we are in Him. We can see where we're going because we are no longer blind, like in chapter 2, verse 11.
I'm not exactly sure that that's what he intended, but that certainly lines up. I would agree with that. I think John would agree with that. I'm not sure he exactly intended it that way, okay? But that certainly lines up. In other words, those things will do what you said, okay, the way you pieced it together. All right, next.
We've had a bunch of questions that we've shared various teachings. This one popped back up again from Messenger. Is asking, and this was clarified. He says, sometimes you judge those following the Christian way, but is it that the Father will pull those when He is ready out of that situation?
All right, so that kind of goes to what Shira kind of mentioned. There's a teaching I did called the Millennium and Kingdom that will address those concerns, okay? I've got another teaching that I will be doing at some point, not sure when, that will address it in another direction, okay? So we will address that. But understand this, the Father has a plan for everybody. Now, everybody still needs to go through a drawing. There is the millennium. There will be people alive in the flesh in the millennium. Okay? We're told that there's a thing called the second death, which means that to have a second death, there has to be a second life. Which means that there will be people that maybe didn't have that drawing in the first life, and they will have it in the second life. It's not a second chance. You only get one chance. But to have a one chance, you have to actually have that bubble pop, that drawing, okay? Okay, so anyway, listen to the Millennium and Kingdom teaching. That'll handle that. Next.
That is pretty, unless Olivia's hasn't got her last part in, so I can't ask the question, but
No, don't worry about it. We'll get to Olivia's question when she gets it down, or she'll bring it to a zone meeting, or she'll make an appointment, and we'll take care of it that way. All right, so that's going to run it out for today.